Welcome to a live episode of Surviving the Survivor. We bring you the best guests in all of true crime. Don't forget to subscribe and smash that like button. Here's your host, Emmy Award-winning broadcaster, Joel Waldman.
Are you pleading guilty because you are guilty? That was a question that Judge Stephen Hippler asked at this historic plea hearing today, and the response from Bryan Kohberger was cold, it was chilling, and it was simple. The response was yes. He showed no remorse. He admitted, Bryan Kohberger did, to the murders of Kaylee Gonzalez, Madison Mogen, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin, and that he did it all with premeditation. This is Surviving the Survivor, the show that brings you the very best guests in all of true crime. And every once in a while, they're so good that they are actual, literal living legends. Let me introduce Ann and bring her in. And I'm going to explain what happened to Katherine Ramsland. How you doing, Ann?
I'm doing good, Joel.
Good, good. So Dr. Ann Burgess, for those who have been living under a rock, she's an internationally recognized pioneer in the assessment and treatment of victims of trauma and abuse. She's also the author of A Killer by Design, and among her many awards and accolades, as I mentioned, in 2016, she was named a living legend by the American Academy of Nursing. She still teaches at Boston College, and she still writes, and she still goes to Scott Duffy's seminars in Wilmington and asked me if I was going to be a crime con. Anne has more energy than like 17 20-year-olds combined. She has a new book, too, called Expert Witness, The Weight of Our Testimony When Justice Hangs in the Balance. It is called Expert Witness, The Weight of Our Testimony When Justice Hangs in the Balance. It is by Ann Burgess and Steve Constantine. It is going to be available September 2nd. Can you get pre-orders now, Ann?
Yeah, I think they can. Yes. Yes.
Yeah. There you go. And if you don't have enough of Ann, you can watch Mastermind on Hulu, which was produced by Dakota Fanning and her sister. And it's about Ann's story and in particular, some of the profiling work she did alongside the FBI. So, by the way, we had promoted Katherine Ramsland, Dr. Katherine Ramsland, and she said yes. And she wanted to come on the show. But guess who said no? Her attorney. She did a very little bit of media between yesterday and today. And in that time, a couple of journalists, not surprisingly, took her words out of context. And her attorney stepped in and said he doesn't want her doing any more media. So she has stepped back. We've got some of the sound that our friend Brian Enton did with Dr. Ramsland that we're going to play in a little bit. But to the legend, Dr. Ann Burgess, when you learned that Bryan Kohberger was going to, come to this plea agreement and say guilty, 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 guilty of the 4 murders, what was your initial reaction?
Well, my initial reaction was it was a good decision. I wasn't surprised at the decision, but I was surprised that he made it in terms of his personality, that the need to be recognized and the narcissism behind it all. I had always wondered whether he would agree to a plea deal, but I think in the last few weeks or months, there's been an accumulation of evidence, certainly witness evidence that was weighing up against him. So I suspect his attorneys worked with him on that decision.
So the biggest question, and that everyone has, is the one that I don't know if it'll ever get answered. And we're going to come back to this photo in a minute because this is an important picture, and we got to get the victims up there as well. But Ann, the biggest question still is why? Think we're ever going to know the answer to that?
Well, of course, you're going to have to get the answer from him, but from our work with other murders, we know that it starts, and this was premeditated. He even admitted to it. You know that he had planned it. So you want to back up and see how early did that happen? What was the structure of the fantasy as it develops over time? We do have, at least what's been in the public media, some understanding of the problems he was running into. especially with women. And so I think that we can, from a structure standpoint, but the actual content, of course, is going to need to come from him. And I think he will tell somebody at some point. I don't think he's going to get into it now, but if he's the type that wants his story told and wants some recognition, I think that's when it's going to come out. But as far as content wise, not necessarily. No, I would agree with you. It's going to be hard to get the actual content, the actual fantasies and how they developed and how they built. But I do think it's interesting to look at his background and look at some of the comments that he made to begin to get some idea of where he was going with this.
Yeah, there's so many directions, and we're going to get SDS Nation to have some questions for you as well, because I always love when you're on. But you and Dr. Bricata, who we did reach out to, and Gary was unable to come on, we had you on before they ever arrested Bryan Kohberger, before they ever had him in custody, while the murders had happened, but we didn't know who it was. And you and Gary basically profiled him to a T. How come you didn't say this is I don't know, a sanitation worker, a million other things? There's a million different occupations. You basically nailed it on the head. There's someone in this chat who obviously doesn't know who you are, saying, oh, you guys think you know who this guy is. Well, Anne has a lot better idea than most. How did you come to that profile before his arrest?
Well, we came to it in terms of the work that we've done. There are patterns to people. It's not that this is a unique murder, is not a unique phenomenon, if you will, at this point. So we had some background, at least 100 years of background. And so that's what we put together and tried to see how close we would come. It's always a challenge when you don't have the suspect to see how close you're going to become to actually get some of the characteristics, not who it is per se, but the characteristics of them. That's what the profiling is all about.
Yeah. So, Anne, let me ask you a question that I wasn't planning to ask you. He's going to be sent to a state prison in Idaho. You get a call, hey, we want you to come interview him for whatever reason. I don't know if, someone asks you. You get into a room with him. How do you start a conversation with him? What would you want to ask him?
Well, I would start a conversation the way I usually start when I'm doing exactly that type of an assignment, and just get them comfortable, get them relaxed, just talk about any everyday kinds of things. How's it going, especially in prison? What's new? What's the food? Just that kind of non-sensitive or material. And then to get into the content, which what you're really going for, is I start developmentally. What's your earliest memory? And see what he says and kind of develop from there, because the early memories have to be the formation of the thinking or the fantasy, whatever you want to call it. And then how does it develop? Does it get off track? Because everybody has daydreams. Everybody has thoughts when they're growing up. And so with many of the men that we've studied, some stuff starts around childhood of 5, 6, 7, that early. And then, of course, the next big area you want to get into is the adolescent area. And so you would just say, did these thoughts ever change? Did you see them going? What did you start looking at? So you want to get at, that they've all been in pornography. So what type did they get into? And that can give you some good direction if they're able to, at that time, tell you a little bit about it. I know Bob Ressler used to take in detective magazines to see what type they like by just showing them the covers. So he wouldn't have to ask them, well, did you like this or did you like that? But you could say, how'd you look at this picture? What do you see in this picture? And it's amazing. It was a little Rorschach, his detective Rorschach, I used to call it. So I get into it that way. I might even get him to sketch a bit. I certainly did that with Eric Menendez, to see if there is something that kind of stands out there. And then just see where it goes. You don't know how much you're going to get. I think that it's important to do, if you do these types, I always go in with a opposite sex. I go in with a male, so that there are two of us. You never know who they will relate to better, being obviously me being female and his being targeting females, he might not, he might feel better talking with a male. Those are just some of the things I'd be thinking of in setting up any kind of a interview with someone like Bryan. Kohberger.
And if he got the call that Dr. Ann Burgess is coming to interview him, it's sort of paradoxical here because you are Dr. Ann Burgess. I'm sure he knows who you are because he was a PhD in criminology and he's fascinated by killings, apparently. Would that just feed into exactly what he wants? I'm not suggesting that you shouldn't go there. Obviously, if you ever got the interview, of course you would go. But could you get, I guess, sort of a pure and honest from someone like this? Because he almost certainly knows who you are. So that maybe complicates it a little bit.
Well, you can use it. You can use it in the interview. I wouldn't back away from it, but I think what you're saying is right where you want to go eventually into his education. And how did that go? Because there were some bumps and turns, I think, as I understand it there. And let's see if he would match what is public knowledge about that. Since I wouldn't have anything but public knowledge, it's always important to see where you're right or where public knowledge is wrong. And then hopefully get into his experience getting into PhD program. I teach in those types of programs too. So I'm just curious. I would be curious to see how much he matched. Part of it is doing what we call matching to see if he's being truthful, because you never know, right? You don't want him to be giving you a whole lot of information that isn't true. And I kind of like to talk about doing an interview like with aerodynamics that, when you're flying a plane and you lose your lift, you're going to crash. And all of us can get into tight moments in interviews of any kind, and you've lost the person or you're not going the right direction. So what I would do is to look at what are those areas, not that you want to just ignore them, but what did you talk about that seems to have turned him in the wrong direction? So those are all just kind of the way you asked, how would I do an interview? And those are just some of the ways that I would run one.
By the way, I told Ann it'll be casual. It won't be that long, but I have 25 million questions now. So we'll see how long Ann can last with me. This year is a question. Sweet and Salty has a question. I have a good friend who watches the show. He's an attorney in LA, and he texted me earlier, and he said, there's no way this is the first time Bryan Kohberger has killed somebody. There's no way you start with 4. And that's a question here from Sweet and Salty. Do you think this was his first killing? What do you think, Ann?
Well, you asked us that, remember?
Yeah, I did.
So you know what we said back then. If you looked at
the remind us all.
I don't remember what I said. But I would say that no, he's right, or she's right, whoever Saucy is, and there's certainly going to be some background behavior that you want to look at. Now, how lethal it got, did it rise to the level of murder? Now, he did leave a lot of clues, right? He didn't do it. He didn't do the perfect murder. Would you agree? Yes. Obviously. Yeah. So something went wrong, and several things went wrong, as a matter of fact, that he evidently didn't count on, unless he wanted, someone's going to say, well, maybe he wanted to be caught. I don't know, but he certainly did get caught, if you will, that he has to plead on this. So he certainly had, I would answer your question, he certainly had some kind of very bad behavior, but whether it was he was 28, so he was in the age. There's one bad section of his life that nobody seems to know much about between high school and college, but it sounds like he would have, we didn't say anything that rose to that level. I wouldn't say he had. I know that I think we did. I don't know what Gary said, but I think we did think that he had certainly done possibly there could have been some rape behavior. Mm-hmm. And again, you have to look at his pornography. I don't know what the nature of that. I don't know if anyone has reported on that. And that would give you some idea. And
you said that early in this interview. So I was going to ask you, is there like a singular common denominator among I'm just going to call them serial killers because I think you would have gone there. Look at Wendy Woobles, big Dr. Burgess fangirl. Wow, I feel in such awe. By the way, Anne is much cooler in person even than she is on camera. One of the coolest people you ever meet. But and her husband's pretty cool too. What was the question? I just lost what I was going to say here. Because see,
Was there one single?
Yeah, the common denominator. Thank you, Anne.
Yeah.
Is it pornography? Like, what is the one thing that is the thread through all of these different kind of depraved serial killers?
Well, certainly the type of pornography they watch. You know, we did the study that we did, of course, was earlier, and so they were heavy into detective magazines or things like that. But pornography, since it's been so easy to get on the internet and so forth, is very much where it can fuel their fantasies. It's all of them have. And you don't ask the question, do you look at pornography? You really say, now tell me about the type you like. You don't even ask if they do it. You assume that they are into it. So yes, to your question.
Yeah. And one thing that, I mean, just piggybacking off of this, I don't know if you caught the Dateline episode. It's controversial because there was a gag order in place at the time and they had a lot of information. But so he had this woman who was sort of interested in him at Washington State University. She was, I want to say she's Asian. I think South Korean. And apparently Bryan Kohberger didn't show any interest in her, but she was sort of interested. And then he like set up the security cameras and may have been watching her in a voyeuristic way. We don't know. But obviously, speaking about types, you know, you look at the victims here, beautiful, young, blonde college girls. I mean, do these killers, I guess, in general, have a specific type that they're sort of obsessive about?
Well, I think he did. And many of them do. If you want to do Bundy, I think Bundy had a certain type. And with him, it was the blondes. I think that even the victims fit into the target he had, that he developed the fantasy around that. And I was amazed at how many blondes there were. Even his district defense attorney,
yeah,
at least I saw from the back with blonde, and certainly the victims. Yep, there you go.
Yeah,
very attractive young blondes. Yeah.
And that's just, I like to say their names: Kaylee Gonzalez, Maddie Mogan, Xana Kernodle in the orange, and Ethan Chapin, who's a triplet. I say that every show because I can't imagine what it's like for the siblings to go on.
It's just tragic.
It is horrific. But we're going to get into, I just want to bring up this comment here, and then we've got some sound. We've got Dr. Katherine Ramsland. We have some stuff from earlier in the day. But where is this question? Someone
I was going to say, while you're looking for that question, I'm teaching some high school students this summer. And when this broke, and knowing I was going to be seeing you tonight, I asked them quite honestly, did anyone find him interesting? Would they date him if he was in their class? Questions like that. So I have some of those quotes that we can get into, but it was quite interesting because they didn't know the case. They were high school. They come from all over the country, even outside, some international students. So it was kind of interesting to have them not predict, but see what their motives, what they thought his motive was.
Yeah.
So anyway, just have that if you want to. Yeah.
Well, if they figure out the answer, tell them to let the world know, because everyone wants to know. But Tiger Beat here, Dr. Burgess, do you think he will offer the family any condolences, however insincere, at the sentencing? Is he friendly enough? I don't know if that's the correct word, friendly, but would you expect him to say what do you expect him, if anything, to say at this?
Well, I expect him to say what his attorney tells him to say.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, I don't think you're really asking, is he going to volunteer any thought out of his own head? I don't know. But I think that whatever he does say, we can then decide whether he was told, suggested, maybe I won't say he was told, but suggested to say something. But I think this question really gets to, does he have any remorse? And they don't. I hate to say that, but they don't. I can think of several, maybe there are exceptions, but it's very rare. I think that he does this and gets a lot of emotion from it that isn't what we would call positive.
Yeah, and Dr. Burgess, one of the reporters, and forgive me because I can't remember specifically who was in the courtroom today, noticed that Bryan did not make any eye contact with his own family. He didn't
Yeah.
look at them. He didn't acknowledge them. Why? Is he
Well, I think
embarrassed?
yeah, I think that's what you're seeing, that there may be some shame, some embarrassment. Uh, obviously guilt. My goodness, he admitted he did it,
Mhm.
and there may be some feeling still left that he does care what his family thinks. We don't know how much contact they've had, but I think that's a very important observation.
Yeah, this question here, we're going to mix in STS questions and my questions, and STS will always be better, I think. But can Ann say, from Jody Arrington, a longtime friend of the show here, can Ann say what his future will be when he's incarcerated for life? Will this be his candy store of interviews with inmates and educational studies that people are going to be knocking down at least for the beginning, reporters are going to be trying to get interviews, criminal profilers might be trying to get in there. So, it seems like it's been 2.5 years, but it seems like this plea agreement came around very quickly, that he kind of surrendered almost. I
Right.
guess you're surprised by that. And what do you think his life in prison will be like?
Well, I think, first in prison, what they say and what my experience has been in interviewing them, there is a period, obviously, where it has to set in that this is it, this is life. And so there can be some depression, there can be even some suicidal thoughts because it is all over kind of thing. So I think that period has to go in. And then when they come out of that period is when if there's going to be interviews and so forth, that's going to have some important information. It might come. I don't think it comes right away. I would never be interested in seeing him right away until he's gone through this period.
How long does that period last?
It can depend. I remember the Ryan Ferguson case, who was in prison for 10 years. He didn't even do the crime. And he said it took 3 years before he absolutely gave up. Now, he did get released, of course, but this is someone who was innocent and had to was incarcerated. So when you've got someone who did do it and admits it, I think you're going to have, I think the time period, it takes a while. Don't forget, it's new, it's different. There will be, exactly as you said, everybody's going to be calling, who can see him, et cetera, et cetera. His family, is he going to want to see his family? Those kinds of things all come first, I think.
Yeah. From Charles in Charge, this is to me very upsetting that the families are split here, particularly the Gonzalez family. The father didn't even go in today out of protest. What are your thoughts on the mixed reactions from the victim's family? How did those that don't like the outcome find a path forward to healing? I mean, if you could talk to Steve Gonzalez, whose daughter is, I don't think any of us can put ourselves in those shoes, and hopefully we don't have to, because this is the worst, imaginable tragedy. But he's very angry. He wants this guy put to death. I guess what would you say to Steve Gonzalez?
Well, I think that's where we should be putting our energies as the family. This is just unbelievably tragic for them. They wanted to see him. They wanted him to be convicted, which he would, I think he would have been, and then get a death penalty. Absolutely. So I think they need their own time to talk. They need to get it out, so to speak, so that even though they're split, you're never going to have all families react the same way. So I think that's very, very important. If they can they should be interviewed if they're willing, just to let people know how tragic this is for a family, how it absolutely reconnects the family or refigurates the family.
Yeah, it's that is a tough pill to swallow, just to watch that. From Courtney H., another longtime STS nationer, does the fact that he killed the girls upstairs first say anything in terms of his motive? He had a definite direction, went in, goes up the stairs. Does that mean that was his intended target?
Well, that's what we struggled with. Don't forget, before we even knew who it was, and that's important. Is that when you have 4 victims, who's the first, and how does that sequence go? And that's really, I don't think we have any more information on that than we had at that time. Does he go for one person? Does he get the wrong room? Does he not know they're all there? All of that. Of course, now that we know that he had, at least from the public information, that he had visited or his car had been seen at the place, I don't know, 12 times. I think we even had some question that it would go into the party house and mix with the the young people. Okay. So all of that, I think he would be getting a lot of pleasure, whatever you want to call it, from just doing that and knowing that that's something that how he's planning it. That's all part of the planning, and the measurement and the timing and all of that.
Super chat from Tor, and we got a lot of questions. So if you want to get them into Ann, the best way to do it is with a super chat, because the COE will definitely see the bright yellow. Love Dr. Ann. Do you think he enjoyed his spotlight today? It seemed like he didn't have much humility, except for maybe not looking at his family, but did he enjoy this moment?
Well, see, I think that's where it's mixed, because I think part of him, of course, wanted to get away with it, have the perfect murder. I think that was one piece, if you will, of the fantasy. But then now he's faced with, he didn't get that piece, that he had to give in and do that. But then second piece of that is the publicity and the priority that shows is, is he going to enjoy, from being narcissistic aspect to him, which they all have, that level of narcissism. Is that going to now, because as you say, is everybody going to want to talk about him? People going to want to write books about him? Will his name be on covers of books? Things like that may set in. That could be part of the motive.
Yeah. I want to focus on this picture for a minute. We'll get back to this about the majoring in criminology, but I had to call the COE, my wife, because I was like, where is he? I can't. And she's like, he's the guy sitting there. He looked to me, looked unrecognizable, because it's his big day. This is like a yearbook photo when my son goes to school. Like, suddenly he's got the haircut, he's got the tie, the perfect knot, the shirt pulled up. Some people are saying maybe he's wearing a bulletproof vest, but also, most inmates put on weight in jail. This guy is staying extremely lean. Like, what do you see when you see this picture here?
Well, see, I want to know, is he working out? I know jails certainly have workout rooms. Is he specifically trying to muscle up, so to speak? But I would agree with you. In fact, I was thinking there have been photos that people have been flashing on the screen of him in a suit, and he's always in a suit or a tie. You don't see him in sweaters, like they put the Menendez brothers in sweaters, or I think even
Sean Combs,
Diddy was in sweaters. So he looks like an executive, right? Or that he's the producer of all this, and I think that's really important. Yeah, I hadn't seen this. When you first put it up, I thought that is, and there he is, he's swearing in.
Yeah, he's taking the oath there. Now, COE, leave this up for a second. A bunch of people messaged me and said, you got to ask Ann. People are saying that he trimmed his eyebrows. And if you know, and I know the surviving roommates made that sort of declaration to police. They said, look, this guy had bushy eyebrows, but even his eyebrows look sort of trimmed down. So I don't know, what is this all about? Why is he putting on? He has sort of a new image, a new look here.
He does. He's got his hair cut really cut short than he has. It looks much lighter. You're right on the eyebrows.
Yeah.
Be interesting to know if he did that. Let's look at that. Do you have the year on that? Do we know when that was?
I don't have the year, but it's obvious. It's definitely, months,
about a year ago.
Yeah, it's definitely months, if not a year old.
Compare those two. Very different.
Yeah.
And he has lost weight. You can see it in his face.
And COE, if you can find the hoodie shot of him, because I want to ask Ann about. Let's just go there now. He apparently, Ann, was searching Ted Bundy. He was doing all kinds of Google searches, had a fascination. Is this a common thread where these high-profile killers are fascinated with killers before them?
Well, that's true. That's what we're finding in our research, is that they all have their quote hero, their crime hero. And it's always interesting. We're now asking is who did you was it Bundy or some of them, the school shooters who are young, they all have someone, was it the United Healthcare
Yeah, Luigi
killer?
Mangione. Luigi
Yeah,
Mangione.
he liked Ted Kaczynski.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So yes, so yes to your question. They all have someone. See, they are following. There he is.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
And this is eerily similar to a
Yes.
photo of Ted Bundy. Do you think he was? I mean, is this all intentional? Is my question, which I think it
Yes.
is. Yeah.
Yes. He does
And
nothing not intentional.
interesting. He does nothing that's not intentional. COE
Right.
also, if you can you? I should have probably told you this before, but can we grab the thumbs up selfie? Because I want Ann to give us her take on that. But from Sue Joy here, these questions are amazing, by the way, and you guys are making my job a lot easier because this is the 4th show of the day, so I'm sort of delirious. But even if he talks at some point, and would he be telling the truth?
You only can tell that by having something to match it against. And knowing him well enough, that they had seen him before. That's hard on just a one-time interview. So that's why I always recommend you collect as much public information as you can, because at least, even though it's anecdotal, it still gives you something. And I think the other thing is not only to match it with that, but also to match it with what we know about this type of oh my golly, yeah, there he is.
Yeah. Now this, I'm sure you know, but this was taken in the early morning hours of the 13th, which is the day these murders were committed. And here he is. And we can compare shirts, by the way, in a second, because he might be wearing the same shirt in court. They look very similar. But Ann, what about this? He's in front of a shower, which suggests that he was washing himself or cleaning himself, and he's giving the thumbs up. You said everything he does is intentional. So what's happening here?
Well, there's your narcissism. I did it. I carried it off. Is this before he did it or after?
This is right after he did it.
Right after, yeah.
A few hours. Yeah.
He looks very proud of himself, I think, right? That kind of smirky smile, and look at the bushy eyebrows and the hair. Very different from what you showed earlier.
Yeah. Now, Ann, keep an eye on this shirt. Look at this shirt. Now, COE, let's bring up the courtroom shirt. Today, that's the shirt from then. I think I can. Is that the same shirt?
He likes that shirt. There's I forget what you men call that shirt, but it's a special collar, short collar. Yeah, unless that's his only shirt.
I don't know, but it's kind of crazy that it's that intentional. Now let me ask you, what he's back in jail tonight. He's awaiting sentencing, which is, I think, July 23rd is going to be sentencing. What do you think is rolling around his mind tonight when he's back alone? He's out of the spotlight. He's sitting in a jail cell, but he knows that even the judge said something today about how special security was needed today, how they're going to need special security for the sentencing because of the high profile nature of this case. He knows the attention he's getting. What is he thinking to himself tonight, if you had to guess?
Well, I think he's enjoying all of this in his own way, that he's getting a lot out of this, that maybe it has paid off for what he's done and some of the changes, just as we've been talking about some of the appearances. And that is he going to be the best mass killer? As the judge said, it's a high profile case. So all of that is feeding into the part of him that really wants the recognition and thinks that he pulled it off or tried to pull it off. So I think he's just thinking of ways that maybe how it's going to go, who he's going to see, and how much he's going to be able to enjoy this. I don't think at this point, this is a high. This is before he goes to prison, where it's going to be, nobody's going to be there. I think that's when there's the big drop that they all describe. So he's high on it right now.
And I mean, the adrenaline is flowing, but that, I mean, we both know Kerry Rawson, and we both know, and she's not having the easiest time right now. So my thoughts are with her, but, she talked to me about how her father, still kind of controls things from prison, but he, number one, he's in very poor health. But when they do get to prison, and I don't mean right away, but 10, 15, and he's a young guy, he just turned 30. 20 years from now, what do you, if he survives that long, and I'm not sure that he will, either by his own doing or by someone else's, but he's going to be a very high value target in prison. But, if he's still around in 20 years, is there any chance this guy has some sort of self-reflection, can admit to the fact that he was in a, I don't know, in a crazed, sort of delirium when he carried this all out, or will he be exactly the same 20 years from now?
Well, I don't think he'll be exactly the same. I wouldn't say that. They do change, and there will be programs, I hope, that maybe will work with him. I mean, I'm just giving you the experience I've had watching the Menendez brothers over 35 years.
Mhm.
But he is, a lot will depend on what there is available. And what is in his mind. Is he have the fantasy he's going to get out, that somehow there will be an appeal? Well, of course, he took a deal, so he can't. I understand there should be no legal appeals available to him, but or is he going to dig in and try to contribute? Is he going to be part of the population, the incarcerated population, and do something? There are things. Will he finish his degree? There's no reason he can't take courses. I think. I don't know enough about Idaho prisons, obviously,
Right.
but
Well, they might. Yeah, they might not want him studying criminology. I don't know, but
that's for sure.
And I'll find out. From Brad here, another super chat here. Dr. Burgess, do you think that Bryan's family will reveal more details later on, like Kerry Rawson did with her dad, BTK? I guess that's very, specific to the family.
Well, that's a wonderful question, because that's where some energy should go. That family knows more than they've said. I don't think they've said much of anything. All we know is the composition of the family, that he had 2 older sisters and one who was a therapist. That's all I've ever read. So I think that certainly having 2 older sisters and knowing what he thinks about women, that's going to be important, of what the childhood with the sisters was like, or whomever else was in the family. So I hope that they do. I hope that they will realize that it would be important to understand. How do they understand it? That would be the question. How do they understand it? Did they ever suspect? Did they ever worry about his behavior? Did they ever think of he should be seeing a counselor, anything like that, since they obviously are both, or one of the sisters is in the counseling field?
Thank you to LEM for this. Kudos to Joel, the COE, the mods, me, Mo, and best guests. We are a team here. And so it all gets,
Great,
it's been a crazy couple of days in the true crime world.
Sure.
Before I get to this question, and COE, we can leave this up. Let me ask you, I was reading that Ted Bundy was actually terrified of the death penalty, terrified of death. Is there a chance that Bryan Kohberger appears to have an affinity to Ted Bundy, maybe himself knew that he was headed to the death penalty, to the firing squad, and maybe said, it's time for me to make a deal here, because maybe he is afraid of dying? Is there any potential truth to that?
I would agree with that. Idaho has a firing squad, don't they?
Yes, they do. Yeah.
I think the crime world hasn't heard that in any other. So I think that's a big input to making a decision. I would agree with you. Yes.
What about this from, I'm not sure what the name is here, so I'll just read the question. Can Dr. Burgess give any insight on how his mannerisms changed from being sort of cocky when he first appeared in Pennsylvania in that green turtle vest, to him acting meek as a mouse once he got his change of venue? We haven't even really we've heard a couple words here and there. Today's the most we've heard him talk, but you remember the green turtle vest, and then we have this today where he's taken a much more kind of quiet, soft-spoken approach. Why the change, I guess, if there is?
Well, I think the change, to get back to your earlier question, has to do, that probably scared him, that he had to put a vest on. Maybe somebody was going to shoot him. That could have gone through his mind. We don't know. But I think the other part that I liked looking at, remember when he got stopped by the state police on, I forget what county he was in on his drive with his father back to Pennsylvania from Washington to Pennsylvania. He was very calm. He even tried to not, he made an extra comment to the police officer, something you're told not to do. You know, he was cocky. He was certainly, for someone who had just done what he did and didn't act with a lot of guilt. You know, some people would have thought, oh my gosh, they found out who I was or something. No, he just, he was driving too close, I think, to another car, which is rather interesting that it was on this big highway. So I saw that behavior as quite interesting, as well as the one that you just pointed out.
Yeah, if you guys remember, he was stopped twice in a matter of like 20 minutes, and he was cool as a cucumber. The FBI swears that they were not in on that, but some people think that they were tailing him. I don't think we'll ever know. That's the picture right there. Yeah. And you can see him looking out. But Ann, I mean, this is a guy who today admitted that he killed these 4 college students, and this happened on November 13th of 2022, and he finishes the entire semester before he heads back home to Pennsylvania. I mean, I could, you know, if I leave a studio light on, I'm having trouble sleeping. How is this guy able to finish a semester of school and just go on with his life after this?
Well, that's the important part of how he can turn his emotions off, because what you described is what most people would describe. Good heavens. And yet he does all this. And there was some commentary about students at the university who later learned he was a suspect, and said the only change that they saw is he became more quiet when they talked about the murders. So he wasn't going to do anything, at least from that one student's comment. So yes, amazing. The picture that he took, I think, tells it right afterwards, and that he's back and forth. He changed the license plates, don't forget, a week after he did the murders. So that I think that was to try to, in case he might have thought, well, maybe they got pictures of the car. Oh, they probably had pictures of the cars in the newspaper public. And so he wanted to, not that it was his. I'm not sure if it was his. Remember, there were 4 cars.
Yeah.
But at the time, we didn't know who they were. Was one of us his?
Yeah, but they were on the hunt for this white Hyundai Elantra.
Yeah,
And so
that's true.
Brooke here, and then COE, we're going to play some sound right after this question. And Brooke wants to know if you plan to speak to Bryan Kohberger once he's been in prison for a while. Is that in your future plans to try to, I don't know how you even arrange these interviews, but is that, I mean,
no, I have no plans. I'm curious to see no, I don't have any plans.
COE, let's bring up a clip from court so we can get Ann's reaction. Let me read this comment. Jenny Price has been around for a long time, friend of the show. Love Dr. Burgess so much. What kind of demeanor do you think you will have with inmates? Will he be able to exploit them or be dominant, victimized? Who will he be? How will he be with his parents? And before you answer that, Ann, we're told, or I was told by a former prison warden, that it's going to be multiple years before he is ever out of probably solitary or protective custody, because he's such like a high value target. They're not going to let him out. He's going to live in isolation.
That's good information, because they certainly have protocol for that. So he's not going to be seeing anyone until he
while he's what's the kind of thing that he will, I would lose my mind if I'm stuck in a prison cell 23 hours a day or more. What's he going to do? Is he going to read? Is he going to study up on serial killers? What's this guy going to do in there?
Well, that's the problem. He's going to have plenty of time to think. So they have to come up with something to do with themselves. I think they're allowed like 1 or 2 journals or news. I'm not sure they're allowed the newspaper, but I'm thinking of North Carolina in some cases I have there, and they can take 1 journal, but it's not anything that's like news or anything. So I'm sure Idaho is going to have their own protocol on what they can have. It's going to be very hard, and it's going to be very different, because up to this time, don't forget, he's been working with his lawyer. There have been meetings and they're gearing up for the trial, et cetera, et cetera. That's all changed. That's all gone now. So that's your drop that you're going to see. And certainly once he gets, let's see, they will take him from the courthouse, and obviously it's going to be heavy security. They don't want anything to happen. And so he'll enjoy that part of it until he's then put into solitary. And I think if it's like other prisons, he might only get 1 hour out a day. And I don't think there's much in his room.
No, I think you're right about all of those things. And I almost fell out of my chair because the COE and I watched the Dateline episode, which aired May 9th. We had no idea, but at the end of the show, they mentioned Surviving the Survivor, and the suggestion was that he was watching all these podcasts. Do you think he was kind of getting off on watching this show or other shows and hearing his name?
Well, you can check that out by what's the protocol at the jail that he's been at. Sometimes they have news and sometimes they don't. So I would want to know what they would have available.
Yeah, I think this was also in the early days before he was caught, like when I had you and Gary on.
Oh,
yeah. So
he will, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think he would follow it if he had access to it. I would say yes to that.
Yeah. Now, Anne, the American criminal justice system would be troubled if I was running the show. And I'll tell you why. I'm going to put that photo back up that the COE just took down right here. Because if I was running the criminal justice system, I would convict based on the eyes. Look at these eyes. What is it? What is it? Is there truth? You always hear that. Wow, look, it was all in his eyes. You hear that about so many killers.
Right.
Why? Is there truth to that?
It's the stare also. It's the stare. I've heard that and sometimes when you don't know, when I talked with some of the students today, they were bothered by the look in the eyes and the staring. And I remember on some of the other cases that's what really gets people. And that's because they're thinking something. It's not a happy, friendly eye. Look at that. He's looking straight at you. Do you know what he's thinking? Well, do you think it's a happy thought or a good thought? No, I wouldn't think so. But I do think he has so changed. That is amazing that you've got these photos of him.
Yeah, I don't know that I would want to know. It's scary. It's kind of eerie. This comment here, and COE, can we cue up whichever sound? Not Katherine Ramsland yet, but some sound from today. I'm 47 now, Holly says, but when I was a teenager, my dream was to be a profiler with the FBI. I was into true crime before it was acceptable. Dr. Burgess is one of my idols. So, Anne, what fascinated you about all of this? I know I've asked you this before, but for everybody watching, what made you decide to make this your life, like your life's work?
Well, I just got into it by chance. I had to, Linda Holmson told me I had to write and publish if I wanted to stay in academia. It was that simple. So we just do project after project. And then they invited me, go down to the FBI, and I needed data, and boy, did they have data. So that was really what, and they had to produce something. So that's really how it was, two people getting together to have to produce something for their careers.
Yeah, I feel so much better hearing you say that, because people ask me, "Oh, how'd you end up on TV reporting?" And everything I've ever done in my life is by accident. I have no real idea. The only thing is, Anne is a living legend, and I don't know what I am. I'm just living. COE, can you pull up, since you know what these are? Let's pull up. This is going to be a clip from the plea hearing today. I want Anne to weigh in on what she sees and Bryan's demeanor in court. COE, let her rip.
That as the defendant has just admitted and pleaded guilty on November 13th, 2022.
COE, hold that for 1 second. I just want Anne to know, because I don't know if Anne was able to watch the hearing, but he's sitting, these boxes are very small. He's off to the right, sitting next to Ann Taylor, his attorney, and this is Bill Thompson for everybody watching. He is the prosecutor from Latah County, and I think this is where the prosecutor himself gets a little emotional. So let's re-roll that, COE.
And he has no coat on, I see. He's
no.
The defendant has just admitted and pleaded guilty on November 13th, 2022. Excuse me. Mr. Kohberger entered the residence at 1122 King Road in Moscow, Idaho. He did that with the intent to kill. We will not represent that he intended to commit all of the murders that he did that night, but we know that that is what resulted, and that he then killed intentionally, willfully, deliberately, with premeditation, and with malice forethought, Maddie Mogen, Kaylee Gonzalez, Ethan Chapin, and Santa Cruz. Thank you.
That's a powerful
That is.
clip.
What is that? Who is he?
He's the lead prosecutor. He's the DA from Latah County.
Wow.
They moved. So he was getting broken up there talking about the victims. But and what's interesting about that is Bryan Kohberger is sitting super stiff with his hands on his thighs almost the whole time. What do you make of that kind of posture?
Well, I think he was bracing himself and trying to hold it together. That is one place where I think that he could have had, he didn't want himself to break down. I think he wanted to be very stoic, which it looks like he is. And if he's got his hands on his thighs, he's really bracing. I see it as bracing himself to get through it. I think this is the hard part. I think he evidently has some access to feelings. And the last thing he wanted to do would be to break down, I think.
Our friend Ned Smith's in the chat. Ned, I was asking about you in case you didn't think I was asking about you. Don't ever disappear again on us. Southern Mom here. Dr. Gary Mercado mentioned something interesting on a show last night. Ted Bundy's execution was permanently stayed by the court on July 2nd. Today is July 2nd. Coincidence? I personally don't think so, because the judge is the one determining the date. But what about that, Ann?
No, I agree with you. I don't think in this situation it's like, I think that they got the plea and they're going to move ahead.
Yeah.
It's been so hard on the community, and this has been a terrible, terrible, tragic case for the families and the community. Anybody that knew these young women and men.
There's a question here, and COE will take the next court clip in 1 second. But Dr. Burgess, did you show your students the plea deal today? Is this something that you will use in future studies?
Well, I always do this. I mean, this just happened. We were in class, and so they were given an assignment last night to talk about why they think he did it. We did the case yesterday in class, and then today, yes, the plea deal. Yes.
Let's watch another clip from court. COE, let's go to the videotape.
All right. Based on the state's proffer and
let's try that again. COE, you want to try that again?
Based on the state's proffer and, importantly, based upon defendants' explicit admission to committing these crimes, the court finds there is a factual basis. Therefore, with respect to count 1, burglary, felony, how do you plead, Mr. Kohberger, guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
As to count 2, murder in the first degree, as it relates to the murder of Madison Mogen, how do you plead, guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
As to count 3, as it relates to murder in the first degree for the murder of Kaylee Gonzalez, how do you plead, guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
As to count 4, the first-degree murder of Xana Kernodle, a human being, how do you plead, guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
As to count 5, the first-degree murder of Ethan Chapin, a human being, how do you plead, guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
I mean, and he's answering like he's, is it sunny out? Yes. Was it cloudy yesterday? Yeah. Like that's as much. He has zero affect.
Right. But he's been told to say that. He knew exactly right from the first. You might say he came right on time with all of those. I agree with you. Very matter of fact. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of it's
he has a stare of a coyote.
Yeah, stare of a coyote from Allie's mom. Thanks to Dr. Burgess and STS for giving us something to look forward to at the end of it has been quite a week of true crime, starting with the firefighters being ambushed by that 20-year-old. But COE, I see two other clips. There's one with Bryan Kohberger in the jumpsuit, whichever one you think is better. I think they're both related to Katherine Ramsland. Let's go to Katherine Ramsland. Let's pull up that soundbite. This is Katherine Ramsland, I believe, talking to News Nation last night to Bryan Enton, who's a friend of ours, and he got the scoop. And she was, again, going to come on tonight, but the lawyer told her no. Let's take a look at that and see what she has to say. She taught Bryan Kohberger at DeSales University.
In the fall of 2018, when he came to DeSales University, he had an associate's degree, and he was going to get into our 4-year program as a psychology major. He selected the forensic track, which made him an advisee for me because I managed the forensic track. And he was also in my class that semester. He seemed like eager to be in the classroom. He was polite. He was respectful, intense, and curious. And there was no reason for me to think that he was anything other than someone who was really interested in this potential career. When I look back, there really isn't anything that stood out to me. I think when you're a teacher, your instinct is to accept students at face value. You don't, start with suspicions or, and there really weren't any red flags. He was always really quite respectful and grateful. He would thank me for things. He was attentive. He would do the work. I didn't have any concerns.
And your reaction? I don't know. Are you friends with Katherine? I don't want to put you on the spot here, but I know you obviously know
Well,
her.
I obviously know her. I mean, she's very well known in the field, so obviously, yes.
And again, she had remained quiet. Kudos to Bryan for getting that. She hasn't been able to speak, and then the minute she talked and was going to come on here, the lawyers shut her back down to protect her, which is what they should do. But what do you make of that? She was basically saying he seemed like any normal student, and it's my job as a teacher to teach. I didn't really notice anything out of the ordinary. Are you surprised that she didn't notice anything out of the ordinary?
Well, I would want to know what he wrote about. I mean, that she has access to all of his writings, and that's what you look at, not how they're look. I mean, that's fine that she said all that. I have no quarrel with that, but I think that did she pick up anything with his writings? Because you make your students, especially at the graduate level, they should be doing reflection papers and things like that. And did that seem odd? That's where she should have picked something up. If there is anything to pick up, I don't know. But just looking at him and seeing students come and go, was there anything about his behavior? Did he dress the same way? I mean, there are a lot of ways that you can compare your students to does he stand out in any way and any unusual behavior? So obviously he didn't, at least from her assessment at this particular time. And I know she's thought about this, and this was not easy. She even, I think, states that, good heavens, to have and gave him a recommendation, I'm sure, to get into as a doctoral student. And I think that's interesting that he goes to Washington University, I think it's Washington State, which is just the opposite end of where the Sal's is.
Yeah.
So I think there is a lot to explore. Let me just say that in terms of the education, how he writes, what he was into, that whole survey. Remember, he did a survey, a Reddit survey. Very interesting, the questions he was asking. Mm-hmm. So you could pick up stuff just on that.
He also wrote, I know he wrote, I forget if I think it was a fictional story that he wrote about someone being stabbed to death. And there were very similar, a lot of similarities with what happened in Moscow. So Gen X here, which is what I am, seems I remember Kaylee's dad said that Kaylee was punched in the face. There was some talk about this, I think, fairly early on. Does that mean that Bryan was angry she was there, or just her fighting him? Also, Ethan being cut up, if true. When these killers carry this out, is it an anger? Is it a resentment? Is it vengeful?
Well, I'll say you don't have murder without anger. So yes, anger is there. How the intensity, that you could tell on autopsy, and that's something I have no access to. Yeah. So I think that those questions you're going to have to, you really don't want to speculate on those without having some facts.
Okay. the winning wallet here. We're going to go, I have to be mindful of Anne's time, about another 15 minutes if Anne is cool with that, and then we'll get some final
Sure.
thoughts. But the winning wallet here, any thought, I wish I had a winning wallet, any thought on him trying to outdo or outperform Ted Bundy, BTK to be seen as, or BTK to be seen as superior to them? And I'll couple that with this question. Do you think if he got away with this, would he have killed again, Anne? So was he trying to outdo his heroes, and would he have done this again?
Yes and yes. I think that he would like to be seen as the super killer. And would he kill again? Yes, he would. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. I don't know how he could resist that urge, because
Right.
it seems like an obsessive thought. By the way, and we can leave this comment up, but do all these killers have, I was just talking, I'm trying to write a book about my father, who's a psychiatrist, and I was just talking about this with my mom. I mean, there are brain images and brain imaging, and so we know a lot more now than we did 30 or 40 years ago. But do you find, or do you know if these killers all have sort of an obsessive compulsive disorder to them, that they are so focused? Someone once told me that BTK, that's all he thought about. Like, he could turn things on and off, but no matter what, all he's thinking about is killing.
That's right. That's their whole world. That's why when you ask, well, what is he thinking? Well, it's got to be kind of put in through a veil of the resentment and the anger. All that's the motive that's going into this. There's a lot of anger, hatred, and so forth. Now, it doesn't look that way when you look at him. He looks normal, but it's there.
Jamie adding that July 2nd, which is today, Ted Bundy got his second death sentence for the sorority killing. So I think it's probably coincidental, and maybe he's excited about that, but I don't know that the judge would have scheduled this for today, or the lawyers, whoever does the scheduling. But it's an interesting coincidence, I think. But, and I got to ask you, so this is a guy who's meticulous. Today in court, Bill Thompson, the DA, talked about how everyone's cars got, like, at least a little bit of residue in it from, being dirty, some more than others, like the COEs. But his car was immaculate, not a speck in the car. So my question is, if he was that obsessive, how on earth did that knife sheath end up staying behind? There's a part of me that thinks he did it intentionally. What do you think?
I think there's a possibility of that. I would not disagree with you in terms of that. That is highly unusual. Something happened if it that was left. That was a big clue. And I think it's OCD. He does have that. Look at how, remember, he made the family buy all new plates or dishes to cook food in. He is had to have special diet. And they catered to him. They gave him that. I don't know whether they're going to do that in prison, but we'll see. And yes, he's look the way he looks. You picked it out. His tie is perfect, knot, and his hair. He's always looked very neat. Even his prison clothes looked like they had just been unpacked. So he doesn't muscle them up, so to speak. So that's a big part of his personality. And so that he left behind the sheath of the knife, of all things, right?
Yeah.
Where do you think the knife is? That's what we always wanted to know. Does he still have the knife? Would he have kept that, or would he try to have discarded it?
Yeah, the Snake River, a lot of people, they know there's coordinates, and he was by this big river, so people think maybe he tossed it into the river. For those who there's a lot of new people here, so if you like and appreciate the content, please hit the like button, subscribe, and Surviving the Survivor. We do a nightly talk show like this, not always with living legends, but we usually have 3 guests on. Anne gets her own show, but typically 3 guests, and we talk about trending true crime stories, big stories that are in the news. This week happens to be particularly insane. But Mary Kolovich here, Dr. Burgess is an icon. Do you think, in his own sick way, that he will enjoy hearing these victim impact statements? So the families are going to get up there. I don't know how Steve Gonzalez is going to walk in there, but the families are supposed to walk in there Not, they haven't obviously given the choice, but they can address him. Is he going to savor that moment?
Yes, and he's going to watch his reaction. That's one of the things that the FBI, when they had special ways of planning how to cross-examine a witness kind of thing. So I would watch very carefully. I think that you should try to get the footage on that to see what his reaction is as the family member is talking, because some of these impact statements are going to be very hard, I think, if he is really listening. Or does he just turn it off that he isn't going to? We'll see. When is that? Tomorrow?
No, it's
23rd.
July 23rd. July
23rd,
23rd. Phantom 6000, a friend of mine, lives in Los Angeles. Dr. Burgess, I find it hard to believe that this kid just kills 4 people. No past record, nothing. What's a thought on other undiscovered crimes?
Yeah, and that's something we have talked about. And don't forget, they can commit crimes, and it doesn't have to be reported or recorded. So I'm not saying that he never has done anything. We have plenty of it, not plenty, but we certainly have some examples of his behavior. He lost his TA teaching assistantship before the semester was over. You have to be pretty bad to lose your TA, who is supposed to be such a help to you. I mean, that's really hard on a faculty member. So there was a lot going on that nobody picked up. They have had complaints, but they didn't put 2 and 2 together.
And what's interesting in this Dateline episode, they interviewed, he was at a pool party and he was super awkward, and they interviewed people who interacted with him, and they across the board all said that he was off. But you meet people that are off, and you just don't think that they're going to be serial killers.
No,
by the way,
right.
yeah, and they say that the defense attorneys say that he was on the autism spectrum, but others say no way. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I don't have any thoughts on that. You have to have some records to look at. I know I did see that, but
okay.
I don't know anything about that.
Okay. About 5 to 7 more minutes, so we're going to go through these questions quickly here. But Grateful 1111, thank you for the super chat. Do you think it's easy for observers to comment on his looks as evil or soulless by knowing what we know now about his guilt and evilness? Is it easier to say someone like BK looks a certain way after we find they're guilty?
Well, yes, of course. Look at what Katherine Ramsland said. She didn't see anything abnormal about him. He looked like any other student. So obviously, she couldn't get into his mind. That's where you have to get into their minds to find out what they're thinking. Thinking drives the behavior, not emotion. Thinking drives the behavior. So if you can't get into their thinking, that's why getting students to write is so important. So important. And he wanted to compare his thinking with other criminals. Remember that Reddit survey was very, very interesting. That he wanted to find out what other persons that had committed a crime. So that your question about had he committed any, maybe he hadn't, not at the level certainly, but that he wanted to know how others manage their feelings, because that is something he wasn't able to do. He didn't have the empathy. Obviously, we know that.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's I love the way, Ann deconstructs this so well. It's really fascinating. But Pat Richards here, Dr. Ann, is Kohberger an incel?
From what you've described tonight or what I've seen, it sounds like he is.
There you go. We have one more soundbite with Katherine Ramsland. Look at this. I know this. Ann is the best guest. We have best guest in true crime, but she is the best guest. So, COE, let's play this last soundbite and a couple quick more questions and then final thoughts.
The antisocial behavior course involves serial killers and mass murderers, and we do a lot of case analysis. I use two books that I wrote. One was written with the BTK killer, whom you just mentioned, and his decision process and the crimes and how he thought about them and felt about them and what was it like for him, to be caught. So that's a very intense book. And also I have one called The Mind of a Murderer, which was about various behavioral experts over the past century who interviewed killers, mass murderers, and serial killers to get as close as possible, spending a lot of time with them to get as close as possible to their process of becoming a criminal. And so he would have been exposed to that. I think some of now looking back, I would look at maybe some of the things that interested him as being, something that gives me pause. But we always have to think about, we all know, everyone in this field, forensic psychology and criminology, know that we could have students who might become offenders. But we also know that the vast majority of our students will not, and will instead go into a field like law enforcement, FBI, Secret Service, that make the world better, that protect us. So we know that there's always a risk that we're attracting somebody who wants to do something terrible. Hoping we won't ever have that, but in my case, I did.
By the way, I didn't notice there's someone sitting right to her right, to our left, and I guess that might be her attorney. So did not notice that till just now. One of the sort of the theories that's been floated out there, and is that he was actually trying to impress. Oh, it was Bryan Enton. I'm sorry. Oh, in the 2 box. Okay, I'm sorry, my bad. So one of the theories is that he was trying to impress Dr. Ramsland. Do you think there could be anything to that? That you've got this very well-known, somewhat famous criminology professor. He's taken a class with her, and now he wants to show her that he's this phenomenal killer.
Oh, I agree. Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. How about this? Dr. Burgess, will he still be compulsively thinking about murder when alone for so many hours and no chance to act on those thoughts once sentenced? What does that do to someone's mind? This is a great question. So he ruminates about this all the time, and unless he's trying to kill someone who's a inmate, he's not going to have any opportunity. What happens to that mind when you can't act on it?
Well, the mind is going to be planning and plotting, and maybe he will do that, or maybe he will get into something else about how he uses his mind. He's going to have a lot of time on his hand, and I don't think he's going to have a lot of access at this particular time to any books or anything like that. And as I think Dr. Ramsland said, she certainly had quite a entree of topics that he would have been interested in, and I think he was going to try to impress her with that survey. That was going to be sent out. It would be easy kind of survey to analyze, and then he'd be able to write about getting into the mind. Remember, one of her books is The Mind of a Serial Killer. So I'm sure that's what he was thinking. He also had tried over the years to get into law enforcement, and they would reject him. I think that's interesting that they knew something that wasn't right for their field, for their discipline. It certainly wasn't I don't think, a personality kind of contest to get into law enforcement, but he's had a lot of roads that he have been roadblocked by it. And so here he goes into the school system. And I would agree he wanted to impress his professor.
Yeah. Captain Rhett Snuggler, and thank you for her service here. She says, I spent 35 years in law enforcement. I'm female and have been frustrated. Not much has changed. I'm heartened to see, Dr. Burgess, that you've made a huge difference in the field. Thank you. Followed here by Larissa Harris. Until the plea came to light, I was not definitive on guilt. No injuries, no blood found in the car. How did you pull this off? Great question. Forensically, that does not happen. Timing, advanced report discrepancies. Blah, blah, blah. It's a great point. People are wondering, how was virtually no DNA evidence left behind except for that sheath? No blood DNA that they could collect. It was the most savage kind of killing. I mean, the stabbing death of 4 different people. How did this happen? And I guess the question to couple with is, how long do you think he planned for this?
Oh, well, I think he planned quite a bit. Well, the question, I don't think he planned till he got out there. So he was only out there for the semester, right? So he had to be there. So now you had, and he had work to do as a teacher's assistant. So, but I think, so he's got 3 months. I'd back it up in terms of just committing a murder. Probably went way back. Now, the fact that he takes 4, that is monumental. I mean, a quadruple killing is, there are not a lot of those. It's not only, it's always hard to kill all by yourself. I've heard murderers that tell me that they get in there and they don't realize how hard it is to do what they're doing. And he does 4, and no noise, no screaming. I think there might be some testimony that could have been on the ones in the basement hearing, or the first floor hearing him. But you have to admit that this was incredible, with exactly what she said in her note, with only that one night sheaf being left.
This is a
What
good
if it
point.
hadn't been? I'm wondering where we'd be.
Yeah, I don't know if he'd be caught. I really don't know.
I know.
And by the way, if he didn't take the plea deal, you just saw that comment. There are a lot of people out there who are saying this guy's completely innocent. There'll still be people who are going to say, well, he was forced to do this by, whatever it is. But this guy today said he did these crimes. Again, Armand Fence, also in agreement with Phantom 6000. I cannot believe this is his first crime. To take on 4 people as a first attempt is unbelievable. And maybe that's what he wants us talking about. And maybe that's his proudest moment, which is just crazy. I mean, just to step back, all of us as a rational person, this guy, I guess, was so obsessed and perseverating about this so much that he was willing to sacrifice his whole life. Obviously, he killed 4 people, but selfishly, he was able to sacrifice his own life to go to prison to do this. It's just a crazy thought. It doesn't make, to me, it makes no sense. So, Anne, 2 other questions, and we'll get final thoughts. I mean, what is like the ripple effect of a case like this? People are fascinated by killers. They see this guy. I remember, and I think I told you this in the early days, like my wife and I were afraid to keep, our doors unlocked, and we're living in Miami. These types of killers really frighten a generation. People are still talking about Ted Bundy. So what is the ripple effect of these crimes?
Yeah, the ripple effect is as you say, it keeps this whole fear, living in fear of crime. That's a big area of research, actually. And people can relate to it. And maybe they can't, certainly students do. I think that this is the type of case where students are really kind of shocked by it. And we certainly do all we can to advise them on how to stay safe, because this is a horrible thing for a university to have to go through, as you can imagine, let alone other people. So I think that that's something we have to keep in mind, that the community always, whatever the community is, it's going to be affected, the family. And you have to try to hope that you can prevent this. Could we have prevented it? Could there have been to me, there were warning signs along the line, not necessarily that he was going to be a killer, but certainly that he was a very troubled young man.
Yeah. By the way,
yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Noon on Friday, Dr. G explains, he's coming on. He's a body behavior expert, and he's going to break down Bryan Kohberger in court, speaking the pictures, and tell us what he thinks his body language was telling us. And I guess that's going to be a tough job, because his body language was very still. But you're not going to want to miss that, noon on Friday, which happens to be the 4th of July. So happy birthday to America. So Anne, final question and your final thoughts. I mean, is there, you always hear like, we've got to pay more attention if someone seems, a little awkward, as these people did in the Dateline episode, but is there any real way to stop this from happening? These killers from emerging and doing what they're kind of hell-bent on doing and just obsessive about?
Well, you have to get them. They give warning signs. I keep saying that. I bet when you go back through his history, and somebody that he will talk to, or his family will finally talk, the problem is, who do you take them to? We've had cases where they have taken their child to a psychiatrist, and the psychiatrist will say, oh, he'll outgrow it. really odd behavior that a 10-year-old shouldn't be doing, kind of thing. So, and then do you get the child or the young person to the right person? A lot of people are not trained. That's why I think this kind of education that you do for your audience is very important. You hope that they will talk about it, that they will get the word out, so that we should be focused on prevention. What can we do when we're worried about someone, and can we take them to a place where something can be evaluated? I think that's where we've got to put our energies.
That is an amazing final thought, but I'll let you get one more final thought because I have one more question. Do you think he was targeting? A lot of people believe that he was targeting Madison Mogen and COE. Can we put the photos of the victims back up? Do you think he was obsessed with one of these people? And in this one, that would be Maddie. I think she's on the left there, the far left.
Yeah, the two on the left.
Yeah,
the far left.
Yeah. Do you think that it was just Maddie that he was infatuated with, and this is a horrible word and I hate to use it, but the others were collateral damage, or did he want all four dead?
That's a good question. Certainly the collateral issue is important. I know that it's hard to hear, but there are often collateral victims, and in this case I do think there were. Unless he had been in the house, and it doesn't sound like he had enough time to be in the house that night to know about them. They all came in at different times. I mean, again, you have to, I'm only looking at what public information there has been. I think she was targeted. I do think that maybe the two of them were targeted. They're both very blonde. Mm-hmm. And that seems to be one of his criteria, so to speak, for that. There's the question of whether he picked the wrong room, didn't know the room. Don't forget, this is at night. Mm-hmm. and lights are out. Now I think there was some talk that he had one of those things on his head, that kind of a flashlight, but you've got to be that he could have gotten the wrong room. That certainly has happened. Yeah. Which one was the top floor?
These
girls?
These two, yeah, Kaylee and Maddie, yeah, and that's where he went
second for first, right?
Yeah, he went there first, yeah.
Yeah.
So Anne, now that we've gotten your insight and we're talking about a killer this whole time, can you reassure us with a soothing final statement? I mean, Anne, you study the worst of the worst, these serial killers, but the vast majority of people, do you still, I guess my question is, do you still believe in humanity after all these years, and that good outweighs the evil and that good will prevail?
It's hard, but you have to believe in that. You really do, right? We don't have any choice, Joe. We don't have any choice. You have to keep going. The motto is onward, just onward. And to please keep in your prayers and your thoughts the victims, their family. This is a horrible, horrible thing for them to have to go through. And whatever the reaction is, it's normal for them. They cannot be judged in any way on their thoughts or their reactions. They have lost a very important person in their life, and we must respect that. So I think that we all need to keep going and keep doing what we can for prevention. And you need to keep shows going like this, Joel, because it does educate a wide group, and that's wonderful. And so that's where I think we should put our energies.
The highlight of my life is that Anne sometimes shows these videos to her students. So I love that. COE, let's put that photo up again real quick. So we've got Kaylee up there on the left, Gonzalez, Maddie Mogen on the right. The bottom right is Xana Kernodle and Ethan Chapin, who is a triplet, by the way. Can't say that enough. So now his two siblings, brother and sister, triplet siblings, have got to go through life alone. You guys all know that I'm a big fan of my own mother, who's a child Holocaust survivor. And I always say she's the strongest woman I know. But if there's a next stronger woman, it would be Dr. Ann Burgess. They're both two of the most optimistic people, despite being and seeing some of the worst of the worst. My mom, World War II, and studying these, serial killers and other types of killers. And if we're more like Anne and my mom, we're strong and positive, which yours truly has to work on, the world will be a much better place. So be like Anne and be like Harm. Her new book, Anne Burgess, is Expert Witness: The Weight of Our Testimony When Justice Hangs in the Balance. But you just search up Expert Witness. The book is out September 2nd, but you might be able to pre-order it right now. So check that out. And, I can't thank you enough. Thank you, Ned Smith, for this. And we love having you on. So come back soon.
Yep. Thank you so much, Joel.
Love you, America. And we'll see you tomorrow. We're back on the Adelson story. And Friday, we're going to do body language about Bryan Kohberger with Dr. G Explains. Thank you all for being here. We'll see you tomorrow. Have a great night. Be safe. Be kind. Don't kill anyone. And stick around 1 second.